Hey guys, on this video I will be reviewing the second episode of Stateless, and the episode is called Incognito. So this is the new Netflix series, or I guess in Australia it was on ABC, and that's also where it showed up in America. So ABC in some places, but in the UK it's on Netflix. And I was pretty positive on the first episode. I'm not so keen on this one, I don't think, overall. It was still solid enough, but one or two sort of doubts creeping into my mind, I think, with this one. I think because all the main characters are now at the detention centre. They've obviously got there through different sort of means, and we get to see a bit more of the actual place in this episode and some of the things going on. Obviously this is a drama trying to depict some of the more controversial things going on in modern detention centres, and some of the sort of shady practices and how refugees are sometimes treated. But I do have a couple of issues with this episode, and probably worries with the drama moving forward. One is, and it might just be this episode, it did it in the first episode, but I guess because it was a setup episode it didn't matter so much. But in this episode you do get a few flashbacks, and particularly with Sophie, and I guess it's just more of her stuff in the when she was sort of committed and she had doctors and psychiatric evaluations before she escaped to Australia and to this place. And I don't really think that stuff added anything, and there was a point where it was jumping back and forth too much, where it was just the balance wasn't quite right. I think some of it is connect the dots stuff, because she obviously arrives at the detention centre and gives this false name, and we see her in a club at one point, which is back home, and it's like the woman in the club who she meets, whose identity she takes, and that's the name she gives when she gets to the place. So that's obviously showing you that. But I don't know if we necessarily need to see that. Obviously it's nice to know where she got the name from, but it doesn't really add that much. I mean, the important thing is that we know she's given this false name, which, again, as I said in the last review, I'm guessing it's just because she didn't want to be tracked down. Now, what's sort of weird about that in this episode is that from a very early stage, and it might be then this has jumped forward a bit, but from a very early stage in this episode, she's basically freaked out by her surroundings and realizes then that maybe she doesn't belong here and wants to be deported back to Germany, which does make you question, well, why did you come here in the first place? I understand the point of the drama is that she's escaping, just like the and I've got his name actually, so Armin, the Afghanistan character, he's escaping from obviously very harsh, extreme sort of situations with his family. But even so, I mean, I guess this was the first point of call with her coming in as like an outsider, but even so, she's not necessarily a refugee, and she did choose to come to this place in particular. But I think in the last episode it painted a picture that she was just desperate to escape, and she was kind of just out of it, just like unhinged. So maybe she wasn't thinking when she first went to this place. But yeah, the flashbacks don't really add much. Because there's another one where she's like visited in the institute by, I think, like a religious figure who's obviously there to sort of pray for her and get her involved in religion. And she basically seduces him, and she does that as a way to get out so that he'll like kind of sneak her out. And it's all kind of rushed because it's a flashback and it's not like the main focus of the episode. It does feel a bit like rushed through, where this isn't really important. It's just, oh, she seduces this guy and she gets out. And I think for that part of it to work, you need to see more of that. You would need to see more of their relationship, or it just feels like this short sort of answer for, well, we need a way for her to escape. So that's the answer. So the flashbacks I didn't really like. I don't think they added much. The other thing is, I think in this episode it is starting to feel more like that televisual, sort of almost issue-tastic type drama, where it is a bit on the nose at times. It's a bit melodramatic. And I think sometimes you have to make a choice. I think sometimes you have to go with a certain style and you have to make it very sort of engrossing and compelling. But then you can work in like these more serious modern themes as well. But I think they have played it quite sort of dry and straight, and at the same time they're trying to balance a lot of different stuff. And I think the problem with that is maybe some of these issues haven't been given like the focus that really they should. So I think in this episode, to name a couple of examples, I think there are some forced scenes of drama. So we have obviously, we have a scene where one of the guards, the female guard who we've seen in the previous episode, she, because a fight sort of breaks out between a couple of like the refugees, and that then leads to her beating the aggressor, so to speak, the one who they can't get under control. She beats him really badly with like a nightstick or whatever it is, a baton, and several times, and it's an effective scene, but it's just this kind of forced drama. And then you get stuff with Sophie where she kind of, she says she borrows like this woman's like sort of clothes, and she's got like this nice like outfit where she basically took it off like her line, her like washing line. And I think she's wearing it partly because she has like a meeting with like the immigration people to try and arrange for her to convince them then, hey, I don't belong here. I just want to go back to Germany. I just want to be deported. But stuff like that, because then you kind of get this fight between her and the other woman whose clothes she took. And there's a poor part, and then Sophie's at one point kind of like showing off her sort of, I mean, she's got a bra on, but she's showing off her breasts and just stuff like that. The drama does feel a bit forced. Another thing, I mean, speaking of Sophie and her being German, because I could tell in the first episode she had like a German family, but it's a bit weird in this because the actress Yvonne Strozzi actually starts talking in a German accent, not the best accent, so I suspect she's not. I mean, I'm guessing by the name she has like Polish sort of roots or something. And although I think I might have read somewhere she's from Australia, but who knows? Anyway, obviously she's been brought up in America and stuff, but she actually tries a German accent in this, and it felt a bit strange because there was no hint of an accent in the first episode. It was just like her regular voice, and I thought, well, why is she inflicting an accent now? And I think actually the reason probably is then the character is trying to like convince them that she is German, and so she's speaking in a like natural accent to try and convince them to let her go home, to let her out. So actually, if that is why she's doing it, that's actually pretty smart. So I do actually like that. So I'm gonna sort of retcon and that is why she's actually putting an accent on. Although it's still a bit of a continuity thing because you would think if she's German and she's lived in Germany pretty much all her life, then why wouldn't she have a natural German accent anyway? But I guess maybe it's just an audience thing where she's putting it on as a bit of an act. But I suppose not a lot actually happens in this episode. We see a bit more of Cameron, or Cameron, I should say, who's like the brother of the guy who already works here, and he's the one who he took the job for money reasons, basically because he needed a job to support his young family. But from the first time we saw him in the first episode, we could tell he was much more grounded, has much more of a conscience. And it's actually pretty cool because one of the best scenes with him is that he actually references Top Gun at one point, and he's talking to like this like one of like the refugees and talking about Top Gun, and the refugees actually trying to convince him that there's more to Top Gun than meets the eye, which is something that people now sort of think because they do see it as this kind of this big sort of gay sort of classic where there is like subtext to it, but obviously for many years it was just like kind of a fun like action type romp. It was all about the romance and stuff like that. But now people do see it a bit differently. They see it as this cheesy sort of classic with this like gay subtext to it. But obviously for many years it wasn't really seen that way. But so this is quite an amusing like conversation where Cameron's trying to say to him, yeah, you don't watch Top Gun for some plot. And then the guys say, well, that's maybe first time, but when you see it about 10 times or something, you do start seeing like layers. And there are moments of humour like this, which I do appreciate because this is a pretty heavy sort of subject matter and stuff. So I think you do need those lighter moments. But it shows you that Cameron is a good guy, basically. He is talking to the refugees on a human level. He's actually like making things more pleasant for them. He's playing with the kids and stuff and being a human being, basically. And you know, the other like guards sort of frown on this, sort of like, well, why he's being so nice to them, basically. So it sells Cameron on as one of the good guys, basically. And obviously from his point of view, he's really shocked later on when he sees like the beating handed out to one of the refugees. But yeah, I am a bit worried that like in trying to balance the different things, then they're maybe not given enough like weight or enough space to really tackle the issues. I think sometimes the characters are a bit sort of thinly written, especially just some of the other refugees outside of the main characters. But obviously that could change. It's just a bit of a problem at the moment. Now, there is a new character introduced, and that is Claire, who's like the new immigration officer. So she's the one who actually talks to them. It's kind of and tries to deal with their issues. And she's another character I think we're set up to believe she's basically on their side. But one of the first things she has to deal with is a couple of like Sri Lankan refugees are on the roof and they refuse to get down, and she has to try and talk them down. And we see later on actually that then she is actually thinking outside the box and trying to do things differently, because she phones up like the head of the sort of, I guess like the sort of boss or something of the place who isn't there, but and she talks her into can we maybe not get them to fly over, that being the military, can they get them not to fly over the centre, the base, can we limit like their airspace, because it basically freaks the refugees out, it makes them more nervous. And she actually, even though this woman is kind of a bitch and really callous in the way she speaks, which I think again is part of my problem, is the fact that they maybe paint these characters as too black and white, or there's just no subtlety, even though you can sort of believe that there's people like this. You just think maybe they should be a bit more subtle about it, like they wouldn't be this out front and this blatant. But anyway, she talks her into doing that, so that sort of negates that issue. And Claire's kind of saying, which is kind of a simple way to look at it, but it's a different way than they'd been thinking, that hey, if they want to go on the roof, let them go on the roof, as long as they're not DJH it or anything like that, as long as they're safe and they're obviously drinking properly, then if they want to go on the roof, let them go on the roof. And it's almost like no one had actually thought about that before. But we see Claire's like living in like damp conditions, and there's this sort of thing with her and a guy from the media, so she's obviously had like a past with the media. But again, a bit like Cameron, I think she's going to be a character with a bit more morality, someone who's going to try and stand up for the refugees, I think. But the episode actually ends with Claire because of her actions and her stepping in and actually getting the aircrafts to stop flying over, that actually makes the headline news. And a guy, well, it's the guy who's badly beaten, I think, but even though it wasn't really Claire's doing, she kind of, well, it's not that she got the blame for it, but I just think it obviously made headline news and it reflected bad on the centre. And she apparently was sent in partly to avoid stuff like that. Now, focusing on Min for a minute, we sort of get just little bits with him. We get some more flashback stuff, but we get him arriving at the centre, and he's obviously there without his family, and he's worried about about his family. We see him talking to the police actually, and back in well, it's when he's I think first arriving in Australia, but it's obviously after he'd been like separated from his family, and he tells the police the story and basically what happens, and they end up taking him to the centre. But he's reunited with his daughter. She's there as well. And unfortunately, it turns out the rest of the family is dead. The daughter says they drowned. So again, it's this very televisual sort of moment, but it's, it is what it is. Claire gets there too late. She says, "Oh, they're reunited," because I think she already knows this information, but she has to watch them in their moment of despair. So now you can have the daughter and the father staying there, Amir, and yeah, they're obviously gonna try and escape the refugee centre. I think one thing they might be doing with Sophie is the fact that she is the one. I mean, none of them want to be there, but I think she's the one who, in some ways, she's more recent there, and I think a lot of them are like resigned to their fate there, and it just becomes like really normal, whereas she's not in that frame of mind at all. She's feels like a total stranger there, and I think we see that with kind of the opening shots where she's just wandering out into the yard and she's looking around at all these different cultures, and she's kind of taking it in, but she's just like sort of taken aback by it. And she certainly hasn't done anything to like ingratiate herself to the other woman. But they initially bond, but then obviously she takes her clothes. But there's a line near the end where like a Chinese woman offers her kind of a deal for them to like work together on something, but that she can, it's something to do with clothes or something, but Sophie's like, I won't be staying here long. So I think that might be something they play up, where Sophie eventually starts like bonding and getting closer to the people. So they might almost do this sort of thing where you've got all these different cultures and it becomes like this like camaraderie between them. And yeah, so there you have it. That's episode 2 of Stateless. And I'll continue on. I'll see what happens with it. I might sort of drop it after the next one, depending on how it goes. I think in some ways it's not necessarily then it's bad in any way. It's just then maybe there might not be too much to talk about depending on where it actually goes. Or, I mean, if it is going to be a bit more dry, but it seems to be done effective enough in what it's doing, but it's just whether there's enough to talk about. And obviously I've got other stuff right now, but see how it goes anyway. I'll certainly come back for episode 3, so let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you've seen it, like and subscribe if you're new to the channel, and I will be back soon with more television reviews and more movie reviews. But thanks for listening, and goodbye.